Okay, what we're going to look at here is how to use a unit circle to be able to evaluate trig functions, primarily sine and cosine. So first, you have to understand how the unit circle operates. So when we work with our angles, the angles on a unit circle go around in this direction. They go counterclockwise. This is where 0 is starting. Then when we get up this angle up here, we're at 90 degrees. Going around half a circle is 180. Going around 3/4 of a circle is 270. And if I came back to the beginning, I'd have a full circle at 360. Now, what's important to realize is that there are some special values and special coordinates on the unit circle that we have to be aware of. First, starting at 0 and understanding these values. And the ones we're going to be looking at are specifically the special angles of 30, 45, and 60. Those are what we call reference angles. Well, the coordinate at 0, this point right here, the x value is 1, the y value is 0. At 90, this point, the x value is 0, the y value is 1. Now I can go around to the other parts of the circle too. Here, the x coordinate is -1 and the y value is 0. If I went down to 270 at this point, the x value, well, I'm right here at 0, then I'm going down 1. That's why it's a unit circle. It means the radius is equal to 1. So this is 0 and -1. Okay, but the big ones we're going to look at are the ones that are not following on the axes themselves, because these are the ones that could be a little more common. So first, any ones that are in the middle, so it'd be 45 degrees, it would also be like 135 degrees. All the ones in the middle are all going to have the same combination of coordinates. It's going to be √2/2 and √2/2. This comes from a 45, 45, 90 degree triangle. But it's just usually easiest is to memorize that combination. But anytime we're in the middle, it's going to be that. Now, the only difference you're going to see is whether it's positive or negative. Now, in the first quadrant, the points are all both positive. In the second quadrant, x is negative and y is positive. So if I actually wanted to find the value here at 135 degrees, well, it'd be the exact same values. We have √2/2 and √2/2, but the x value is negative. In the third quadrant, they're both negative. So that means if I was down here, and this would be 180 plus 45, that's 225. So if I'm at 225 degrees, well, now I've got negative √2/2 and negative √2/2. Okay, and the same thing, of course, down here. The final quadrant right here, the fourth quadrant, x is positive and y is negative. So this would be at 315. It would be positive √2/2 and then negative √2/2. The big thing is to figure out what these points are and then decide if they're positive or negative afterwards. Okay, now, for our other angles, for 30 and 60, they're always going to use combinations of 1/2 and √3/2. You just got to figure out which one is the 1/2. So if I take a look at 30 degrees and I draw lines back to the axes, one of these gets cut in half. If you look right here, this is 0, this is 1. This right here tells me, cuts the y-axis in half, that means the y coordinate's the 1/2. This one does not get cut in half. This one is the √3/2. So that's how you look at, figure out which one is the half. If I look at 60, if I go down, I can see that it gets cut in half. That's 1/2. This one then must be the root 3 over 2. Okay, so that's just understanding how the unit circle works, just in terms of finding your coordinates. Now, the big part is when you're working with evaluating sine and cosine. The sine is the y value. The cosine is the x. So if I want to know what is sine of 60 degrees, I figure out what my coordinate is, and I look at the y coordinate. Sine of 60 degrees is root 3 over 2. So just got to memorize those values. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples. We have sine of 150 degrees. So typically we'll give you a circle to have as a reference. The first thing you need to do is figure out where is 150. Well, know that this right here is 180. 150 is 30 less. So if I draw my line back, this is my angle. Sine is the y coordinate. So I'm going to draw back to the y-axis, and I see this one cuts it in half. It's a positive 1/2 too. See, it's on the upper half of the circle. The x value would be root 3 over 2, and it'd be negative. See, it's negative on this part right here. But sine is the y coordinate, so my answer is 1/2. So if I wanted to look at the full coordinate, it was negative root 3 over 2 and positive 1/2. But I wanted the sine, so that's why I chose 1/2. Cosine of 315. Okay, so sometimes students have trouble with figuring out, okay, which ones are the 45-degree ones? All the ones that end in 5s. If it's going to be a special angle, that's one you're looking for. So 315 degrees. Well, 360 is right here. If I go backwards 45 degrees, it puts me right in the middle in here. Now, one thing that's nice, all the 45, 45, 90 triangles, in this case, all the ones that end in 5s typically, are going to be root 2 over 2. I just got to find, is it positive or negative? So the coordinate right here is root 2 over 2 and negative root 2 over 2. Because remember, in this quadrant, x is positive, y is negative. So, and I'll show you a little shortcut if you want to help you too, to kind of figure out which one's positive, which one's negative. So this one right here, I want the x coordinate. It's going to be root 2 over 2. Okay, what happens if you go beyond a circle? Well, I have cosine of 570. So I got to figure out where that is. Well, this is over 360. So if I take 570 and I subtract 360, I get 210. So cosine of 570 is the same as cosine of 210. Now, this angle, cosine at 210, well, here's 180. 210 would put me into the third quadrant. Now I've just got to decide, is it not in the middle? So it's going to be a combination of 1/2 and root 3 over 2. I just got to figure out which one's the 1/2. Well, if I draw my line back, the y value is the 1/2. The x value must be the root 3 over 2. The numbers are kind of small. They're both negative here. I want the x coordinate, and that's why I know it's negative root 3 over 2. Okay, here's that little shortcut that does work pretty well. If you remember, all students take control. All of our trig functions are positive here. Sine is positive here. Now, though you haven't looked at tangent yet, tangent is positive in the third quadrant. Tangent is actually equal to sine divided by cosine. But if tangent's positive, it means sine and cosine are both negative. Here, cosine is positive in the fourth quadrant. So remember, all students take control. It goes around the order that you see it. Also, have you ever wondered why we have our quadrants labeled the way they are? 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice how they go in the order of our angles. That's why it's labeled first, second, third, fourth. And you just thought math people were weird the way they labeled it before. Okay, sine of negative 270. Okay, we're going to going backwards. So you could either add 360 to this just to get a positive, or just kind of work backwards. If I'm doing a negative angle, I just go in the opposite direction. So sine of negative 270 is the same as sine of 90, but puts me right here. So the ones that fall on the axis, it's going to be either 0 or 1 or negative 1. Well, I'm up here at the quadrant, up here. That's my point. This point was 0, positive 1. Sine is the y value, so this equals 1.